call came 3 days before the hearing. I was in my home office reviewing quarterly reports when Mom's number lit up my screen. I almost didn't answer. Our last 5 conversations had followed the same pattern. Her asking for something, me providing it, her forgetting to say thank you. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about Monday," she began, using that particular tone that meant she'd already made a decision and was just informing me of it. I set down my pen. "The custody hearing for Grandma's estate?" "Yes. About that." She paused and I heard Dad's voice in the background, coaching her. "David and I have been talking and we think it's best if you don't attend." The words landed exactly as she'd intended them to, like a slap disguised as advice. "I see," I said carefully. "It's just that my attorney, Richard Morrison, is Judge Harris's former law partner. They worked together for 15 years at the state's most prestigious firm. Very elite circles, you understand. The optics matter in these situations." "Optics," I repeated. "Yes. And having you there." She trailed off, leaving the insult hanging in the air like smoke. "You just look desperate, honey. Like you're grasping at straws. It undermines our entire legal strategy." Our legal strategy. As if I were part of some team she was managing, rather than the person whose inheritance they were trying to control. "Morrison and Associates only represents the most successful families in the state," Dad chimed in, having clearly grabbed the phone or switched to speaker. "Judges, senators, corporate executives. Their client list reads like a who's who of achievement. Your presence would just, well, it would send the wrong message about our family's standing." I closed my eyes and counted to 5. This was the same man who'd borrowed $40,000 from me last year to cover his temporary business shortfall. Money I'd never asked about again, even though temporary had become permanent. What message would that be, Dad? That we're not the kind of people who belong in Judge Harris's courtroom, Mom interjected quickly. "Richard has already laid the groundwork. The judge knows we're serious people. Established people. Having you there in your..." She paused delicately. "Well, and whatever you'd wear. It would just undermine months of careful positioning. Whatever I'd wear." I glanced down at my cashmere sweater, the one I'd bought in Milan last spring. They had no idea what I wore, where I shopped, or how I lived. They'd never asked. In their minds, I was still the disappointing daughter who'd dropped out of the family business to pursue some vague, entrepreneurial venture. They'd never bothered to understand. "Richard thinks the judge will be more sympathetic if it's just David and me," Mom continued. "Parent figures concerned about properly managing Mother's estate. You being there would complicate the narrative." The narrative. My grandmother's final wishes had become a narrative to be managed. "And honestly, sweetheart, you don't really understand these legal complexities anyway," Dad added. "Estate law is graduate-level material. Richard went to Yale Law. Clerked for a federal judge. You'd just be sitting there confused while the adults handle things." I opened my laptop and pulled up a particular file I'd been maintaining for 6 months. Bank statements. Property records. A very detailed forensic accounting report. Evidence of exactly how my parents had been managing Grandma's affairs for the past 3 years. "So you don't want me at the hearing," I said flatly. "We're trying to protect you from embarrassment," Mom said, her voice dripping with false concern. "These proceedings can be brutal. Richard will ask technical questions. There will be financial terminology, legal precedents. It would just be over your head and everyone in that courtroom would see it." Everyone in that courtroom. Judge Harris, the bailiff, the court reporter, and most importantly, Richard Morrison and his team of Yale-educated attorneys who thought they were about to win the easiest case of their careers. "I understand," I said quietly. "I knew you'd be reasonable about this," Mom said, relief flooding her voice. "This is for the best, really. We'll handle everything and afterward we'll explain what happened. You don't need to worry about any of it. Don't worry about any of it. Don't attend. Don't ask questions. Don't exist except when they needed something. One more thing," Dad added. "Don't mention this to anyone, all right? Richard thinks it's better if people don't know there's any family discord. Judges look poorly on families that can't present a united front." I hung up 3 minutes later, after promising I wouldn't attend and wouldn't cause any problems. Then I sat in my office for exactly 60 seconds, staring at the city skyline through my floor-to-ceiling windows. Then I pulled up my contacts and found Daniel Chin, my investment advisor at Blackstone Capital Management. I typed out a message. Need to schedule a call regarding Morrison and Associates law firm. Withdrawal of all capital effective immediately. His response came within 30 seconds. The $4.2 million investment? Are you certain? I was certain. Morrison and Associates didn't know it yet, but they had exactly one silent partner who'd been funding their expansion into corporate litigation for the past 18 months. One anonymous investor who'd provided the capital for their new offices, their associate hiring spree, and their aggressive marketing campaign targeting high-net-worth clients. That investor was currently sitting in a home office in downtown Seattle, watching the sun set over Elliott Bay and reconsidering her investment strategy. I'd become a silent investor almost by accident. 8 years ago, fresh out of college with a business degree everyone had dismissed as cute, I'd started a small consulting firm helping mid-size companies optimize their supply chain management. Nothing glamorous. Nothing my family would brag about at dinner parties. The firm had grown. Quietly. Steadily. We'd landed a contract with a regional healthcare system, then a national retail chain, then a Fortune 500 technology company. Within 3 years we were handling logistics for 12 major corporations, and I was clearing 7 figures annually. Within 5 years I'd sold the company for $28 million. My family knew none of this. They'd stopped asking about my work after the first year, when it became clear I wasn't failing spectacularly enough to come crawling back to their furniture business. Mom still introduced me at events as our daughter who's trying her hand at business consulting, using the word trying like I was a child playing dress up. I'd taken the $28 million and diversified carefully. Real estate, index funds, and strategic investments in growing firms that showed promise. Morrison and Associates had been one of those investments. A boutique law firm with excellent attorneys and big ambitions but limited capital. They'd needed $4 million to expand. I'd provided $4.2 million through a private equity fund structured so carefully that even Richard Morrison, Yale Law graduate, had no idea who his benefactor was. The paperwork listed only Cascade Private Holdings, LLC, as the investor. Cascade Private Holdings was me. Just me. A 32-year-old woman whose own mother thought she wasn't court material. I called Daniel Chin. He answered on the first ring. I saw your message, he said without preamble. You want to pull the Morrison funding. Can I ask why? Conflict of interest, I said simply. They're representing someone in litigation that affects me personally. I can't remain invested. Understood. I heard typing in the background. The partnership agreement has a 90-day termination clause with 30 days written notice. However, there's also a breach provision if they're taking actions directly adverse to investor interests. This qualifies, I said. Then we can trigger immediate withdrawal under Section 4.3. They'll have to return the principal within 10 business days. Do you want me to file the notice tonight? I thought about my mother's voice on the phone. Very elite firm. You just look desperate. Yes, I said. Tonight. And Daniel? Make sure the notice goes to Richard Morrison personally. I want him to know it's coming before the hearing on Monday. Consider it done. He'll have it by morning. I hung up and sat in the growing darkness, watching the city lights flicker on below. Somewhere across town my parents were probably having dinner, confident in their legal strategy, secure in their belief that they'd successfully managed me out of the way. They had no idea what was about to happen. Saturday morning I received a forwarded email from Daniel. Richard Morrison had responded to the withdrawal notice at 6:47 a.m., which meant he'd been awake most of the night. The email was professional but barely controlled panic flickered between every line. This is highly irregular timing, he'd written. We're in the middle of major case preparations. A withdrawal of this magnitude will require significant restructuring. Can we discuss this matter before proceeding? Daniel had responded with pure corporate ice. The withdrawal is non-negotiable. Please confirm receipt and compliance timeline. By Saturday afternoon my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Ms. Anderson, this is Richard Morrison from Morrison and Associates. I'm hoping we can discuss the recent notice from Cascade Holdings. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding that we can resolve quickly. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. I deleted the voicemail. Sunday morning he called again. This time I answered. Mr. Morrison, I said pleasantly. Ms. Anderson, thank you for taking my call. He sounded relieved and stressed in equal measure. I'm hoping we can discuss this withdrawal notice. The timing is quite challenging for the firm. I understand, I said. Business decisions can be complicated. Perhaps if I understood your concerns we could address them? We've been excellent stewards of your investment. The firm has grown 37% since you came on board. Your return has been exceptional. The return has been adequate, I corrected. But I have conflict of interest concerns that make continued investment untenable. Conflict of interest? He sounded genuinely confused. I wasn't aware you had any litigation with the firm. Could you help me understand? I'd rather not discuss the details, I said. The withdrawal stands. Ms. Anderson, with respect, this withdrawal will significantly impact our operations. We're in the middle of expanding our corporate division. We have 3 new associates starting next month. The capital has already been allocated. That sounds like a challenging situation, I said sympathetically. I'm sure you'll work it out. Is there anything I can do to change your mind? Any concessions we could make? I paused for just a moment. Mr. Morrison, do you have a case on your docket involving the estate of Eleanor Anderson? The silence on the other end lasted exactly 4 seconds. Yes. We're representing the co-trustees in an estate matter. But I don't see how that. The other party in that litigation is me, Mr. Morrison. Eleanor Anderson was my grandmother. You're representing my parents in their attempt to gain control of her estate, despite very clear instructions in her will that I should be the primary beneficiary and executor. More silence. I wasn't aware, he said finally. The case file lists the opposing party as Sarah Anderson. I didn't make the connection. Sarah is my legal name, I said. I go by my middle name, Grace, in personal matters. But yes, that's me. The daughter who my mother told not to attend tomorrow's hearing because my presence would look desperate and undermine their legal strategy. I heard him take a breath. Ms. Anderson. Your firm has been very successful with my capital, Mr. Morrison. You've built an excellent practice. But I can't remain invested in a firm that's actively working against my interests. I'm sure you understand. If I'd known. You'd have what? Turned down the case? Told my parents you had a conflict? Somehow I doubt it. They're paying you quite well, I imagine. And they assured you I was just an unsophisticated daughter who didn't understand legal complexities. His silence was answer enough. The withdrawal stands, I continued. You'll have the capital returned within 10 business days as specified in our agreement. I wish you the best of luck with your other cases, Mr. Morrison. Tomorrow should be very interesting. I hung up before he could respond. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. I dressed carefully. Navy suit from Armani, pearl earrings, my grandmother's vintage watch. I pulled my hair back in a neat bun and reviewed my folder one final time. Inside were copies of bank statements showing my parents' systematic withdrawal of funds from grandma's accounts over the past 3 years. Property records showing they'd transferred one of her rental properties into their own names 6 months before she died. Email correspondence between them discussing how to manage the situation with her will. And a notarized statement from grandma's estate attorney, dated 2 weeks before her death, explicitly stating her wishes that I manage her affairs. I arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early. The hearing was scheduled for Judge Patricia Harris's courtroom on the 3rd floor. I found a bench in the hallway and waited. My parents arrived 15 minutes later, flanked by Richard Morrison and 2 associate attorneys. Mom was wearing her courtroom best, expensive but understated, the outfit of someone who wanted to appear responsible and trustworthy. Dad wore his important business meeting suit. They saw me immediately. Mom's face went through 3 distinct expressions: surprise, anger, and barely concealed panic. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, walking over quickly. "We discussed this. You promised you wouldn't attend." "I said I understood," I corrected calmly. "I never promised anything." "This is completely inappropriate," Dad said, his face reddening. "You're going to ruin everything we've worked for." Richard Morrison approached more cautiously. He looked like he'd aged 5 years since Saturday. "Ms. Anderson," he said quietly, "could I speak with you privately for a moment?" "I don't think that would be appropriate, Mr. Morrison. You're opposing counsel after all. I think there's been a significant misunderstanding." The only misunderstanding, I said clearly, is that my parents believed I'd simply accept being written out of my own grandmother's life. That was their mistake. You're being dramatic, Mom snapped. Nobody wrote you out of anything. We're simply trying to manage Mother's affairs responsibly. By transferring her property into your names? By withdrawing $70,000 from her accounts for medical expenses that were actually your vacation to Tuscany. The color drained from her face. I don't know what you're talking about. I have the bank statements, Mom. I have the property transfers. I have emails. I have everything. Richard Morrison's expression suggested he was having the worst day of his legal career. Perhaps we should discuss a settlement. No settlement, I said. We're going to let Judge Harris review the evidence and make her determination. The bailiff opened the courtroom doors. Estate of Eleanor Anderson. All parties please enter. Judge Patricia Harris was in her late 50s with steel gray hair and the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen every trick in the book. She reviewed the case file briefly, then looked up at both sides. This is a petition for conservatorship of the deceased's estate, she began. The petitioners argue that the will's designation of Sarah Grace Anderson as executor and primary beneficiary should be set aside in favor of co-trustee management by the deceased's daughter and son-in-law. Is that correct, Mr. Morrison? Yes, Your Honor, Richard Morrison said. He sounded significantly less confident than he probably had during case preparation. However, I'd like to request a brief recess too. Denied. We're here now, counsel. Present your case. Morrison glanced at my parents, then at me, then back at the judge. Your Honor, my clients believe that Miss Sarah Anderson lacks the financial sophistication and maturity to properly manage an estate of this size and complexity. They're requesting that the court appoint them as co-trustees to ensure responsible stewardship of the assets. Ms. Anderson, the judge turned to me. Are you represented by counsel? I am, Your Honor, but he's not present today. I'm prepared to respond to the petition myself. Judge Harris raised an eyebrow. You're appearing pro Southeast on an estate matter? With respect, Your Honor, I didn't think I'd need extensive legal representation to defend my grandmother's clearly expressed wishes. Tell me about these clearly expressed wishes. I opened my folder. Your Honor, I have here a notarized statement from my grandmother's estate attorney, dated 2 weeks before her death. In it, he confirms that Mrs. Eleanor Anderson was of sound mind, understood the full extent of her assets, and specifically designated me as her executor and primary beneficiary. She explicitly stated she did not want her daughter or son-in-law to have access to her accounts. I handed the document to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Judge Harris read it carefully. This seems fairly definitive, Mr. Morrison. What's your response? Your Honor, my clients contest the validity of. On what grounds? The attorney's statement is clear. Mrs. Anderson was competent. She knew what she was doing. We believe undue influence may have been exerted. By whom? Your own document states Ms. Anderson lived independently until 2 days before her death. She wasn't in her granddaughter's care. She made these decisions with her own attorney, whom she'd worked with for 30 years. Richard Morrison was visibly sweating now. Your Honor, my clients have extensive financial experience that would benefit the estate. Let's talk about that financial experience, I interjected. Your Honor, may I present additional evidence? Judge Harris nodded. Proceed. I pulled out the bank statements. These are my grandmother's account records for the past 3 years. You'll note systematic withdrawals totaling approximately $97,000, all authorized by my parents as co-signers. Here's a credit card statement showing charges to luxury resorts in Italy. $70,000 charged to my grandmother's account while my parents were on vacation. Here's a property transfer deed showing one of her rental properties transferred to my parents' names 6 months before her death, signed with what my handwriting expert believes is a forged signature. I handed each document to the bailiff. Judge Harris's expression grew progressively colder as she reviewed them. Mr. Morrison, she said quietly, did you know about these transactions when you filed this petition? Your Honor, we believed these were legitimate estate management expenses. A vacation to Tuscany is estate management? My clients assured me. I don't care what your clients assured you. What I care about is that you brought a petition before this court to remove the designated executor based on her alleged lack of financial sophistication, while your clients were systematically looting the estate they're now asking to control. Your Honor, we can explain, my father started. You'll have an opportunity to explain to the district attorney's office, Judge Harris snapped. What I'm seeing here suggests possible elder financial abuse and estate fraud. Ms. Anderson, do you wish to press charges? I looked at my parents. Mom's face was pale. Dad looked like he might be sick. I haven't decided yet, Your Honor, I said quietly. I want to see how they respond to this situation first. Judge Harris made some notes. The petition for conservatorship is denied. Ms. Sarah Grace Anderson is confirmed as executor and primary beneficiary as designated in Eleanor Anderson's will. The court is ordering a full forensic audit of all transactions involving the deceased's accounts for the past 5 years. Mr. Morrison, your firm is ordered to turn over all documents and communications related to this case within 48 hours. Your Honor. Are we clear, Counselor? Yes, Your Honor. Good. Now about your client's behavior. The court finds this petition was filed in bad faith, with knowledge of facts that directly contradicted your legal arguments. I'm sanctioning your clients personally in the amount of $50,000, payable to the estate they attempted to plunder. Mr. Morrison, I'm also sanctioning your firm $15,000 for failing to properly vet your client's claims. Both sanctions are due within 30 days. Richard Morrison looked like he wanted the floor to open and swallow him. Your Honor, with respect. Do you really want to argue with me right now, Counselor? No, Your Honor. Then we're done here. Ms. Anderson, the estate is yours to manage as your grandmother wished. I suggest you get very good locks for any property involved. Bailiff, please provide Ms. Anderson with information about filing a restraining order if she feels it's necessary. The gavel came down. In the hallway afterward, my parents tried to approach me. Richard Morrison physically stepped between us. Don't, he said quietly to them. Don't say anything. Get in the car and go home. But we need to explain, Mom started. You've explained quite enough, he said tersely. You've cost my firm a major investor, subjected us to court sanctions and possibly exposed yourselves to criminal charges. The best thing you can do right now is leave. This is your fault, Dad hissed at me. You sabotaged us. No, I said calmly. You sabotaged yourselves. I just refused to let you get away with it. We're your parents. And she was my grandmother. The woman who believed in me when you didn't. Who actually asked about my life, my work, my dreams. The one who told me 6 months before she died that she'd changed her will because she'd discovered what you were doing with her money. Mom's face crumpled. She told you. She told me everything. That's why she made me executor. She knew I'd protect what she'd built. She knew you'd just spend it all like you've spent everything else. You pulled your investment from my firm out of spite, Richard Morrison said. It wasn't a question. I pulled my investment because I couldn't remain partnered with a firm representing people who were actively trying to steal from me. You want to call that spite? Go ahead. I call it business. Your investment? Dad said confused. What investment? Richard Morrison closed his eyes. Your daughter was our primary investor. She provided the capital for our expansion. $4.2 million. I watched my parents process this information. Watched their expressions cycle through disbelief, shock, and something that might have been respect if it hadn't been buried under so much resentment. You never told us, Mom said finally. About any of it. The money, the success, the investments. You never asked, I said simply. You decided who I was 8 years ago and never bothered to check if you were right. You assumed I was failing because I wasn't working in your furniture business. You assumed I had nothing because I didn't drive a luxury car or live in your neighborhood. You assumed I was unsophisticated because I didn't go to your country club. You could have said something, Dad protested weakly. Why? So you could ask me for money? So you could tell everyone at the club that your daughter was finally successful enough to matter? No thanks. I built what I built without your help, without your approval, and without your interference. That's exactly how I wanted it. I turned to Richard Morrison. You'll have your capital within 10 business days. I recommend using it to pay off your court sanctions and hire a better vetting process for clients. Maybe ask them for bank statements before you file petitions accusing other people of being financially unsophisticated. I walked away before anyone could respond. Behind me, I heard my mother start to cry. I kept walking. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my grandmother's house, now legally mine, going through her personal papers when my phone rang. Mom's number. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Hello. Grace. Her voice was small. Can we talk? We're talking now. In person. Please. Your father and I. We need to apologize. I looked around the living room at my grandmother's carefully preserved furniture and her collection of first edition books. At the life she'd built through decades of careful choices and hard work. I'm listening, I said. Not on the phone. Please. Give us a chance to make this right. I thought about all the times I'd hoped they'd ask about my life. All the times I'd wanted them to see me as something more than their disappointing daughter. All the times I'd almost told them the truth just to see their faces change. One conversation, I said finally. Here at Grandma's house. This Saturday at 10 a.m. You get 1 hour. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. She hung up before I could change my mind. Saturday morning they arrived exactly on time. Dad was carrying flowers. My grandmother's favorite peonies. Mom's eyes were red like she'd been crying recently. I let them in but didn't offer coffee. You have an hour, I said. Dad set the flowers on the table. We've been doing a lot of thinking this past month. About how we treated you. About how badly we misjudged you. About how badly we failed you, Mom added quietly. As parents. As family. I waited. Words were easy. I wanted to see what came next. We got the forensic audit results from the court, Dad continued. Every withdrawal, every transfer, every expense we charged to your grandmother's accounts. Seeing it all laid out like that. He swallowed hard. We stole from her, Grace. From our own mother. And we convinced ourselves it was justified because we were managing her affairs. We thought we deserved it, Mom said. She had so much. We were struggling with the business. It seemed fair to take what we needed. It wasn't fair, I said flatly. It was theft. We know. Mom's voice broke. We know that now. The district attorney called yesterday. They're filing charges. Elder financial abuse, fraud, forgery. We're looking at prison time. I'd known this was coming. Judge Harris had been very clear about referring the case to prosecutors. We're not asking you to save us, Dad said quickly. We know we don't deserve that. We just wanted you to know that we understand now. We understand what we did to Mother. What we did to you. How completely we failed to see who you really are. The woman who built a multi-million-dollar consulting company from nothing, Mom added. Who became a sophisticated investor managing a portfolio that would impress anyone. Who had the wisdom to stay quiet and let us reveal ourselves. We're so sorry, Grace. For everything. I looked at them. These two people who'd raised me, who'd loved me in their own broken way, who'd ultimately valued money more than truth. I'm not going to ask the DA to drop the charges, I said. What you did was serious. Grandma trusted you, and you betrayed that trust for vacations and cars and maintaining appearances. They both nodded, tears running down Mom's faces. But, I continued slowly, I'm also not going to pursue maximum penalties. I'll provide a victim impact statement that acknowledges you're taking responsibility. That you're getting help. That you understand what you did wrong. Why would you do that? Dad asked. After everything? Because Grandma wouldn't want me to be cruel. She'd want me to be fair. You're going to face consequences. You should face consequences. But I'm not going to destroy you out of spite. Mom sobbed openly now. We don't deserve your mercy. No, I agreed. You don't. But I'm giving it anyway. Because that's who Grandma raised me to be. I stood up. Your hour is almost up. Is there anything else? Just one thing, Dad said. We've been telling everyone the truth. About your success. About how wrong we were. About what an incredible woman you are. It won't fix anything, but we thought you should know. And we're proud of you, Mom added. We should have said that years ago. We should have asked about your life, celebrated your successes, supported your dreams. We failed at all of that. But we want you to know now, even though it's too late, we're proud of you. So proud. I walked them to the door. I need time, I said. A lot of time. I don't know if we'll ever have a real relationship again. But I'm willing to see what happens. After you've faced your consequences and done the work to become better people. That's more than fair, Dad said. Thank you, Grace. For everything. They left and I stood in my grandmother's doorway watching them drive away. My phone buzzed with a message from Daniel Chin. Morrison and Associates completed capital return. $4.2 million transferred to your account. They've requested a meeting about future investment opportunities once their current difficulties are resolved. Interested? I smiled and typed back, not yet. Let's see how they handle adversity first. Good investors know when to wait. I looked around the house that was now mine. At the life my grandmother had built and protected. At the legacy she'd left me, not just money and property but the wisdom to know my own worth and the strength to defend it. Somewhere I thought Grandma was probably smiling. I'd done exactly what she'd trusted me to do. I'd protected what mattered. I'd stood my ground. I'd been fair even when fairness wasn't easy. And I'd done it all without needing anyone's permission or approval. Just like she'd taught me,